anniversary card was lovely. You know, even though it's 5 years now, I still can't get used to being called Mrs. You ask when we're coming home. I have to tell you that I think we might be home already. John has really taken to this country, and so have I. We've come to a decision. We're going to stay here and grow wine. We found a property to the north of the Clare Valley in South Australia. The whole region was busy mining copper at one time. Now all the copper's gone, grapes grow well on the valley slopes. There's a sort of farmhouse in the middle of the place, stone-built with a corrugated tin roof. It's about 300 acres, small by Australian standards. It's very run down, which is why we can just about afford a down payment. In a few years, you'll see, the place will be a going concern. We'll plant lots of trees and do organic things, and it's to be called Kate's Winery. I hope you like this idea, Daddy. Maybe I'll grow some roots now I've stopped wandering. With the first profits from the winery, we're going to fly you out here, first class. As usual, I promise to write more regularly, but you must know that you are often in my thoughts, and always in my heart. Take care. Lovely father. Lots and lots. Kate.
Dear Sexton, the retirement I'd planned for myself was to be a genteel affair. Pottering about are the words which most nearly fit the case. Pottering. To the shops, in the garden, amongst my books. I'd also planned to brew and drink homemade wine and beer, tend my vegetable patch, and answer a lifetime's correspondence. Simple goals. Simple pleasures. I still hope for all this, but, how shall I say it? Something's come up. I shan't trouble you with the details now, and I've had an idea. A great idea. The outline is on the enclosed separate sheet. Perhaps you'd look the thing over when you have a moment. Regards, Julius.
Dear Julius, strange idea. Bad idea. One of the scaliest I've seen. Couldn't countenance it, chuck it out, forget you ever had it. The answer is in the negative. A simple no suffices. No. Clear enough? A morsel of advice, old friend. No more ideas like that. Can't imagine what's going on and what passes for your mind. In haste, as ever, Sexton. P.S. Rain forecast this weekend. Too bad.
Dear Sexton, forgive me if I've got this wrong, but I had hitherto believed that I was employing you, and not, as your letter seems to suggest, the other way about. The question, as I see it, is not, do we proceed with this, but rather, how do we make this work? Perhaps I've misunderstood. Please enlighten. Yours, Julius. P.S. Agreed. Shame about the weather.
My dear Julius, don't be funny. What are you thinking of? What are you playing at? These questions and others must be answered. In a way, it's a relief. The inevitable has happened, and you've gone completely off your rocker. Always knew it had come to this. Surprised you've remained sane so long. Well, when I say sane, you've always been pretty potty in a workaday way, but this is a spectacular departure from your last remnants of sense. If you want to send us some money, by all means. Sell some of those damn books of yours. The place looks like a librarian's nightmare. Sell the lot. If you've got a quid each for them, that'll be 10 grand. Give her that, but at least keep a roof over your head. Believe me, Julius, it's easier to think great thoughts, as I know you enjoy doing, if you've got somewhere out of the rain. Touching your last, yes, most amusing, ha. Certainly, as a professional, I am obliged to follow your instructions, but I beg you to reconsider. This idea is rash, gullible, daft, not to mention whimsical, sentimental, idiotic. I speak as your friend. As ever, Sexton. P.S. Game of bowls weekend after next.
Dear Sexton, thank you for yours of yesterday, which arrived here this morning. Having at length engaged your interest, I'm writing to you now on a serious matter which has given me concern for some time. It's about one of the young men in your employ, a chap who has single-handedly saved your office plant life. Now, before you crumple this letter and hurl it at a wall, as I can just see you doing, I do implore you to hear me out. The young man I'm thinking of has come to your office by mistake. Forgive me for expressing it thus, but he has a finer nature than the law requires. I should think botany or interior design or counselling would be more his line. His parents pushed him into it. I suppose we do such silly things to our children. Frankly, it's like watching a butterfly trying to be a wasp. This is the early stages of a human tragedy which could be averted. Still with me? Good. I appeal to you, Sexton. Speak to the boy. Ask him what he really wants to do in life, and then encourage him. Fire him if need be. Now, touched as I am by your concern for me, as usual expressed with your own inimitable sensitivity, I must tell you on this occasion to take a running jump. My mind is made up. It's my keenly felt inadequacy as a father, coupled with the example of a father's mistake alluded to above, that has led me to forbear all prudence in Catherine's case. I am aware of the risk. But what sort of answer would it be to one of the great questions of life, if puny concern for my comfort alone made me reluctant to help my child? Yours, Julius. P.S. Bowls by all means.
Dear Daddy, are you sure this is such a good idea? Wasn't there a king once who started giving it away to his daughters before his time? Lear was the name, I think. I mean, look what happened to them. Talk about dysfunctional. You write so eloquently on the subject, and knowing what you're like once you get fired up about some idea, I don't suppose that anything I say will change your mind. There is, however, an important condition that attaches to the scheme from this end. The investment, as you put it, will make you the major shareholder in Kate's winery. I want all that properly laid out in contracts and so on. Part ownership of a new vineyard on the other side of the world may not seem like much, but if you've decided to come in on the ground floor, I want to make sure that you see some blue sky on the deal. I think that's how they say it in business. Seriously, Daddy, this idea of yours, are you sure? Wouldn't it be sensible to reconsider? It is wonderful of you to offer your support like this, and it would make everything easier and quicker here. What an unexpected thing to do at your time of life. How very entrepreneurial. Lots and lots of love from us both. Kate.
Dear Julius, are you seriously asking me to believe that an attack of soft-focused sentiment brought on through seeing an office boy water a fern, combined with some ill-thought-out guff about being a good father, has caused you to risk the lot? The thing doesn't stand up. By the way, I've never in all these long years crumpled one of your letters. I enjoy your prose. Having said that, let us come to an understanding. You forbear from telling me how to deal with my staff, and I will allow you to throw your life away with no further appeals to your common sense. I've acted in accordance with your instructions, and have raised the total market value of your house as a loan secured on that house, to be repaid in full together with the accrued interest 18 months hence. I've also transferred the funds to Kate's Winery Proprietary Limited in Australia. Bloody silly, but there it is. Regards, Sexton. P.S. You were in blistering form last Saturday, but watch out. I have a new set of woods which may cause you a few problems.
My dear Sexton, I owe you an explanation. But, by the rights of our friendship, Sexton, let me ask you to read the following with an open mind. Suspend your admirable lawyer's faculty for absorbing a brief at a glance, and read patiently. Sitting comfortably, as they say in the stories? This is what happened. At 4 a.m. one summer morning, I woke up in quite a different way. My eyes opened, and I was aware of my body rising from the bed. My body, apparently functioning under its own volition, not pausing to consult my wishes, stepped purposefully into the bathroom, turned on the cold tap, and put in the plug. I noticed a new vividness in the stained enamel before my body carried me off to the kitchen. Once there, this newly independent body turned the kettle on, and I at once anticipated tea, but watched aghast as my hands warmed a teapot and placed 2 heaped spoonfuls of crushed peppermint leaves in it. When the kettle boiled, my hands poured on the boiling water and left the pot to steep. Had I been less surprised, I might have panicked. I had for some time been a theoretical herbalist, but beyond the purchase of the herbs themselves, this cherished theory, along with many others to my liking, had not manifested itself in any kind of practice. The bath was now full of cold water. I witnessed rather, for I myself seemed powerless, as my body took off my pyjamas, folded them neatly, and not pausing to give expression to the smallest reluctance, lowered itself into the freezing water. If my state of shock and surprise had until now been, say, a 4, the entry of my body into this ablution pushed it immediately to a full and mind-curdling 10. I leapt from the bath and made sound for the first time that day. "Oh!" I yelled. "Oh!" I dressed and went into the garden. I began to perform the short form of the Tai Chi system. It had been fully 30 years since I'd learnt it, and to my memory I'd never done it since, but that didn't seem to matter. I finished with the genuflection. Next, I sat cross-legged on the patio and closed my eyes. All my life came under review, and a procession of all people who had been significant to me came to me one by one. I held the image of each person, approved them, praised them, loved them even. An insight I'd had soon after the birth of my first child came back to me then, with a new dimension of meaning. Some days after holding my baby daughter in my arms for the first time, in a crowded street I'd looked at the people and realized that everybody had been a baby once, that everybody, old and young, ugly or beautiful, had once been this, a baby, vulnerable, innocent. Somebody's daughter, somebody's son. By now the sun had risen, and since I'd awoken, all my experiences that day had been new to me. It was the morning of my 66th birthday, and the first day of my retirement. I opened my eyes, stood up, and went inside. I sat at my desk, which was fully 6 inches high in paperwork. I placed an empty black plastic rubbish bag at my left side. I began to work. In 3 hours I accomplished small miracles that had waited years to happen. Bank statements were filed, checks written and dispatched, open books were closed and replaced on shelves, correspondence was answered. Pens, pencils, paper clips, and all the flotsam of a desktop either thrown away or given a home. At 1 o'clock I paused by the radio, but left it mute. The news that day was with me, not with the world. I ate carrots, some celery, and an orange. So complete was the transformation that had taken hold of me, Sexton, that this diet did not seem strange. From my lifelong reading of the philosophers and mystics, I knew that explosion in consciousness was possible. But nothing had prepared me for what happened next. I cleaned. I cleaned as one who lived for it. Starting at the top of the house, I went through each room, brushing, wiping, scrubbing. Even though I moved like an athlete of housework, it was fully 9:30 in the evening by the time I'd finished. Dusk was falling outside, and my house was in order. When the following morning I awoke, I knew that something profound had happened. I suppose I've had a peak experience, I said to myself. The immediate result of that extraordinary day was my impulse, more than that, my inspiration to risk. These are poetic terms to describe a mortgage. This was the great idea I told you about. After all, Sexton, the universe is a bolder place than we realize. One cannot live one's life as though it were the small print in an insurance policy. Saluting you as the eternal being of light that you undoubtedly are. Regards, Julius.
Dear Julius, I've read your letter in the manner which you asked. More things in heaven and earth, I suppose. Some people would just say barking and leave it at that. And then they'd go and get on with their humdrum lives, and who's to say they'd be wrong, these people? Me, I keep an open mind. Time will tell, I suppose. Regards, Sexton.
Telegram. From Kate's Winery to Julius Hutch, Nightingale Close. Dad, scorching summer here. Harvest soon. Vines laden, huge grapes. Business set to boom. Your presence wanted at first press. Stop shivering in British winter. Prepare to travel. Loads and loads. Kate.
Overseas news now, and reports are coming in of widespread bushfires in South Australia. The worst affected areas are to the north of the Clare Valley, about 200 miles from Adelaide, the state capital. The vineyards in the region have been particularly badly hit by the fires, and it is feared that most of this year's harvest will be lost. Here at home, questions were asked in the House of Commons yesterday as to whether the number of unusual weather conditions now being reported from around the world were indicative of global warming, and if the government intended to go forward with its controversial...
Dear Julius, reluctant as I am to say I told you so, the plain fact is I did tell you so. All in words of one syllable, too. In this whole affair I've acted strictly as your lawyer. It did occur to me to try and make some sort of emergency provision. It wouldn't have been too taxing to devise some subterfuge and siphon off a portion of your assets and purchase an annuity for you or something of the kind. I mean, let's face it, Julius, when it comes to business, you are an innocent abroad. I say it did occur to me, but I took the idea no further. Despite all appearances to the contrary, you are a grown man. So the long and the short is, you have nothing left. Or will have nothing presently. Eventually your creditors will have their due, and what then will become of you? Truth to tell, I blame myself, and therefore would like to propose the following. I've spoken to Marjorie. I know that you haven't seen eye to eye, the two of you, over the years, but never mind all that. Our coach house, Julius. It's yours. For as long as you want it. Needs a lick of paint. We'll see to that. Can't put it in your name, unfortunately. Declared bankrupts and property are a bad mix. I want no argument on this, Julius. It's all arranged. I don't know if this is any consolation at all. Pride, I suppose, has kept me from mentioning it until now, but I took seriously your observations about young Gareth, who was working for me. You were quite right. He loathed it here. You were wrong about the botany, though. He is now, or was when I last heard, struggling away in happy penury for some sort of touring dance troupe. Fulfilled at last. So there we have it. A human tragedy, as you put it, has been saved. I'm down by a bloody good clerk. And you're broke. Curious business. Regards, etc. Sexton. P.S. The coach house is a lot handier for the green.
Dear Sexton, I won't say it isn't a shock, it is, and I won't say you weren't right. How could I? It was bad luck in the end. Had South Australia not ignited and the harvest not gone up in smoke, well, there certainly would have been a case of Australian Shiraz in it for you, Sexton. By the world's ways, I have been a fool. Fool that I am, truth is, I never for a moment believed that the project would be anything but wildly successful. South Australia is made for grapes, or so I thought. And having witnessed a father's mistake in the form of that young man at your office, I thought it might be fun at my time of life to make a father's success by setting my girl up in her own business. I confess that now I'm facing it, the prospect of being dispossessed is a sharp one. All trace of the greater vision I had that one day last year is gone. I seem to be suffering cliched symptoms of shock and find myself turning in small circles, gazing at my books, trying to bring myself to say goodbye to them, and wondering in precisely what circumstances I shall depart this earth. Just now, in the moment of writing to you, I find little to sustain me against this turn of fortune. There is your friendship, which I value highly, of course. Your kindness touches me more than I can say. I do not think I can accept your offer, Sexton. I'm too old to learn what Dante called the bitterness of eating another man's bread and going up and down upon another man's stair. I'm so glad about the clerk. Little consolation, but much delight. Shakespeare said, "I never met philosopher who could endure the toothache patiently." I'm able to tell you he was right. Regards, Julius. P.S. The chief change in my life since all this, wouldn't you agree, is that my bowling has improved by about 300%.
Dear Daddy, it's a disaster. The whole of the land, as far as you can see, looks like some ruined moonscape. We are still alive, though. I remember when I was growing up how you had one characteristic which really used to annoy me, but later on I came to admire it very much. It was that the worse things got, especially when there were money problems, the more cheerful you became. A sort of comic Job. I hope for your sake you can find some of that spirit now. It's terrible to think that you risked everything for me, and you've lost it all. We don't yet know how bad it'll be financially. There's the promise of relief from the authorities here, but that will take time to come through. In the meantime, there are payments to be met. I have a meeting with the bank next week, and we'll try to come up with a plan to struggle on. It's most likely that the property will be repossessed. When we quarrelled, you used to tell me, based on some ancient philosophy or other, that children choose their parents. I used to say, well, there wasn't much going at the time. Now I want to say that I love you. I'm glad you are my father. Do you think that parents choose their children? What were you thinking of? I don't think I've ever told you this, but the day I left home, questing for freedom, I ended up in prison. It's true. I hitchhiked to somewhere in the middle of France. It was a small village. There were no hotels open, so I went to the police, asked them if they could suggest somewhere that I could stay. Next thing I knew, I was shown to a nice dry cell with a single bed. It was comfortable and clean, and the gendarme seemed to think it was a great joke. I mention this now because it's a perfect example of things ending up the complete opposite to what I intended. You know from my occasional one-line postcards over those years that I travelled a great deal. It was what I needed. Remember how I used to complain about being stifled in that suburban house, living my suburban life, how I longed to break out. Suburban life doesn't look too bad from here at the moment, and it's a bigger achievement than I knew. I'm going to make a cup of tea now. As you taught me, at crisis times it's a good solace, drinking tea. That used to annoy me too, the way that everything began and ended with tea. I drink quite a lot of tea myself now. After beer, it's almost an Australian national drink. You see, I'm less annoyed these days. I wish I could leap on a plane and come back right now and see you and give you a big hug. I'd better stay. There's lots to do. Let me know how you are. Lots and lots. Kate.
My dearest Kate, at times like this... What do I mean? I've never had a time like this before. Nice, then, for an old man to experience something new. You mustn't trouble yourself on account of my lost investment. By no means. It simply is not important. Consider the lot of humanity. We make a brief, indescribably brief in geological, to say nothing of cosmological time, a brief appearance here, and during this interval some of us make money. The vast majority do not. Can this famous money-making, then, in any way be considered to be the true purpose of life? I have never ventured into the nether world of psychotherapy. Perhaps I should have. But a Jungian analyst told me once that where there is wine, civilization will follow. Personally, I'm inclined to believe that where there is wine, Jungians will follow. In any case, wine-growing is a noble endeavour. The world needs something to take the edge off, and it appealed so to the brewer in me. But if this particular endeavour has failed, I'm so glad to have been part of it. On the question of choice, yes, since you ask, I suppose I do think that we choose each other. I'm no nearer to understanding life than I was last year, or the year before, come to that. But I do know one thing. We need the others to love. As ever, your loving father.
Dear Mr. Hutch, we have written to you several times regarding your outstanding mortgage payments. We have not received any payment on the amounts due. Enclosed is a formal demand for payment. If the balance is not discharged in full within 10 days, we shall instruct our solicitors, and a repossession order will follow. Should you wish to discuss this matter, please do not hesitate to contact me. Yours sincerely, Mrs. P. Tone, Lending Adviser. Your current account stands at £1,427.63 overdrawn. Please contact us immediately upon receipt of this letter and make arrangements to put the account into credit at your earliest convenience. Yours sincerely, Mrs. P. Tone, Lending Adviser. P.S. Mr. Hutch, I shouldn't really write any more, but I did enjoy our chat the other day. You really made me laugh. In view of your general financial situation, what with the repossession of your home and so forth, this computer letter seems to add insult to injury. Just to say, I know what it's like to run out of money too, and send sympathy.
Dear Mr. Hutch, we recently sent you a final demand for payment of your telephone account. As yet, no payment has been received. We regret to inform you that your telephone has been disconnected. If you have sent a payment within the last 7 days, please ignore this letter. There will be a charge for reconnection. Yours sincerely, A. Thwark, Regional Manager.
Dear Mr. Hutch, it has been necessary to disconnect your electricity supply due to non-payment of accounts. There will be a charge for reconnecting the supply. If you have sent a payment within the last 7 days, please ignore this letter. Yours faithfully, E.H. Matrix, Area Controller.
Dear Mr. Hutch, we are surprised to see that you have not settled last month's payment of £3.76. Surely you do not wish to tarnish your record as a respected customer with Value Book Club? If the amount is not paid in full, we shall be forced to take further action to recover it. Sincerely, George Whistle.
From Julius Hutch. To all my creditors. Dear Sirs, I am not a wealthy man. To open this correspondence with such a bland and bald statement may seem to you unnecessary, as I am sure in this age of credit reference you are already aware of the fact. But to me, the open utterance of that testimony is, in fact, significant, if only in the psychological sense. In material senses I've known it all my life. But it appears to me now that your name is Legion, that the admittance of my poverty is a significant confronting of the shadow which has dogged me all my life. I count my life a failure. Since early manhood I've struggled to put bread upon the table for myself, my wife, now dead, and my children, now grown and flown, with always only partial success. The state of my indebtedness has at all times been greater than I would have wished, and at no time less. Now, responsible for myself alone at the fag end of my life on earth, I find pecuniary pressure at last bursting through the dam of my labours, and the tide of insolvency about to sweep in flood through all the efforts of my life. My assets are not large, not sufficient, I fear, to satisfy all monetary claims upon me. At such a pass, what refuge of comfort might a man find? I take solace from the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who, although a Roman emperor, and one assumes never short of a crust, advised that the only wisdom in life is to accept it all. Therefore, I am resolved to watch the ensuing drama of possession, repossession, and seizure as a spectator at a play. I shall observe your actions, the inevitable consequence of my inability to pay, as one indifferent. I bear none of you ill will, and I address you all, the several signatories of these several final demands, in the spirit of our common humanity, wishing you nothing but well. When in due process of legality you've taken all I possess, it is my fervent hope that I may endure to wish you still well, and, naked of wealth, return to my Creator, acknowledging a life lived, committing every kind of mistake, but most especially mistakes of a financial flavour. I have the honour, sirs, to remain your most humble and obedient servant, yours sincerely, Julius Hutch. P.S. Mrs. Tone, how kind of you to add a few words of your own to the computer letter. You are the human face of credit, and I thank you.
Dear Mr. Hutch, thank you for your letter, which arrived here 2 days ago. We do not usually advise customers of credits to their accounts, but in view of the contents of your letter, I thought it appropriate to inform you that we have today credited by telegraphic transfer £4,601,740.72 to your account from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Should you require further details on this matter, please do not hesitate to contact us. Yours sincerely, Mrs. P. Tone, Lending Advisor.
My dear Mrs. Tone, how shall I put this? I was surprised, to say the least, by your last letter, and admit to having thought I was the victim of a cruel and tasteless practical joke. A swift visit to the cash dispenser where I checked my balance has proved this not to be the case. Would you be kind enough to confirm the following, in writing? 1. The credit of £4,601,740.72 has indeed been correctly placed at my account. 2. These funds are available for use immediately. Awaiting your reply by return, sincerely yours, kind regards, Julius Hutch.
Dear Mr. Hutch, as per your request, I can confirm the following points. 1. The money has been placed in your account in accordance with instructions received from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. 2. The money is indeed available for immediate use. Of course, you are aware of the position on this last point, as I notice that you have this morning withdrawn all but £1 from your current account. The remaining £1 will be sufficient to keep your account with us open. If you require any further information, please do not hesitate to contact me. Customers in receipt of an unusually large sum often consult with our financial advisor. I would be happy to make an appointment for you. Yours sincerely, Mrs. P. Tone, Lending Advisor.
Telex from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Dear Sirs, it has come to our notice that in the previous month's trading, a substantial amount was wrongly sent to your bank for credit to one of your accounts. The amount in question was some £4.5 million sterling. The credit was due to a clerical error. We should be greatly obliged if you would institute a search for any such credits deposited in accounts where such credits were not expected. Thanking you in anticipation, yours faithfully, Peter Fang, Senior Divisional Executive.
My dear Mrs. Tone, after your kind and prompt verification of the deposit to my account, I found myself in a state of some agitation. To be perfectly truthful with you, now that it is safe to do so, I never expected to have a large sum of money at any time in my life at all, and certainly not now that my strength and earning capacity is failing. Upon reflection, I found what perturbed me most was the daunting weight of responsibility at how to use creatively this financial gain given to me by the will of fate. Various options flashed through my mind. I could attempt to return the money, but I believe I've already mentioned, somewhere, obliquely perhaps, that it may have been mistakenly deposited, and I understand after taking legal advice that within the strict letter of the law that is all I am required to do. So that deals with that option. I'm resolved not to think of it further. The first requirement of my creative action in this matter is that I should be a fit and able instrument of use. Therefore, I prescribed myself a 3-month holiday. I'm resolved to travel in conditions of the greatest possible comfort and surround myself with luxuries. I envisage fine wines, delicate viands, and leisurely sexual recreation with partners of great beauty. This last possibility I venture forth in playful spirit. As you may know, I am now an elderly gentleman, and it has been some time since I indulged in the universal pastime. Nonetheless, if the chance comes my way, I shall not refuse it. That would be churlish. Well now, to the practical arrangements. As you know, wealth creates wealth. This extraordinary fact, borne in upon me with new force, seems already a simple principle. I have divided my windfall in two. After paying off my, what now seem insignificant debts, perspective changes everything, doesn't it? Without hundreds of thousands to one's name, the want of a figure as paltry as £10,000 or £15,000 is enough to ruin a life, make misery. Whereas, in the opposite position, the same sum seems no more than a little overspending during a morning at the shops. After resolving my debts, I have apportioned £250,000 for present use. The rest is safely, anonymously, placed in high-interest Swiss bank accounts, where the collective interest will amount to nearly £10,000 a week. Another charming effect of capitalism when experienced from above. Of course, these arrangements took a little time to prepare, truth to tell. That is why you've not heard from me sooner. It goes without saying, of course, that by the time you read this, I shall be gone. My mind is plunging, raging, thronging with schemes for use of the money, but for the moment I intend to devote myself entirely to the pursuit of restorative pleasure. I look upon you now, Mrs. P. Tone, as a valued friend, a colleague almost. Please find enclosed 2 tickets for Phantom of the Opera, a £half-pound box of Swiss truffles, I do hope they've survived the post, and a book token for £50. On this last, if you're looking for food for thought, you could do worse than peruse the dialogues of Plato. I can recommend the Jowett translation. And on that note, my dear Mrs. P. Tone, at the moment of my departure for foreign climes, I wish you well. Nothing but well. Kind regards. Cordially yours, Julius Hutch.
Dear Mr. Hutch, Thank you for your last letter and enclosures. The Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands have contacted us in respect of the £4,601,740.72 credited to your account back in January. I enclose a copy of their correspondence with us. This is a matter you may wish to take up with them direct. Technically, we have no further responsibility in the matter, having acted in accordance with their initial instructions and responded to your own letters. As a matter of interest, we did follow the usual checking procedures stipulated for very large amounts, but the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands insisted that everything was in order. Thank you for the gifts. Very kind and generous of you, I am sure. Unfortunately, it was not felt appropriate by my boss that I make use of them. But thank you all the same. Cordially yours, Mrs. P. Tone.
Dear Mrs. Tone, what you must think of me. 9 months almost to the day since your last, and no answer yet. Allow me to bring you up to date. It has been a real odyssey. I did not stay long in Paris, no more than 24 hours. I wanted to move on. The sudden surge of power through my financial veins gave me at first boundless energy and extreme good health. I was more active and alert than in many years. I was strolling through the Paris boulevards, contemplating the hiring of a car, when I suddenly realized that a little extravagance might be in order. Accordingly, I bought a 2-seater Lagonda 50 in Forest Green. I bought it for cash. Paris to Saint-Tropez took 3 days. I made brief stops in Beaune and Aix-en-Provence, acquainting myself with those fine wines of which I had dreamt. When I saw the azure coast, I allowed myself to slow down, for at last I felt myself to be properly abroad. I gave myself 7 days, and incidentally nights, for the life of the senses. It was an unfettered indulgence in the balm of spring. Leisurely chauffeuring by day along the precipitate roads, no less leisurely recreation in the universal pastime by night. At my age one does not rush. And here I may say that I was delighted to find that I was still sufficiently youthful to indulge. At the end of that bacchanal week I scanned the port until I found what I was looking for. A young couple gazing deep into each other's eyes, an aura of romance upon them. I approached them, and over a liqueur explained that the sports car standing on the boulevard was now theirs if they would care to accept it. Followed then the main part of my travels. I moved around a good deal, visiting sites of great natural beauty or archaeological interest. In all, I circled the globe and visited all continents, and the distilled impression of this, of necessity hasty travel, is that on all the earth, amongst all peoples, the same hopes, concerns, and fears visit us all. At length, wearied by constant movement, a new need made itself felt. I wanted now a secluded place for reflection, and to digest the surfeit of new impressions my mind and senses had received in these past months. I knew exactly what I was looking for, and am now living in a very remote place. You will forgive me for not describing it in detail. Perhaps paradise is a state of mind. I find now so potently delivered from the numbing anxiety that comes with constant, unsuccessful struggles for money, I find now that it is as if my very consciousness were transformed by the soothing effects of leisure, ease, tranquillity. Let me tell you that our hurt world is still beautiful, but if there is pain in paradise, it is the pain of knowing that so much human life is lived diminished. My belief is, in common with the ancients, that the spark of the universe lives within us all. Well, I know that certain agents of the Bank of Hong Kong and the islands are keen to contact me, and I imagine they will attempt to trace me by all available means. As a matter of fact, it was by chance that I first became aware of their desire to talk to me. I was taking a simple supper in a taverna on the south side of Crete, where I chanced upon an old copy of the Sun newspaper. I was intrigued, but not altogether surprised, to see a photograph of myself standing outside my home at Nightingale Close, with the headline, "Grandpa Bests Bank." The details of the following article were almost accurate and hardly sensationalized at all. But then I suppose it is a fairly sensational story anyway. On this note, thank you for forwarding the relevant correspondence. It does make entertaining reading. The whole catalogue of dismay and fervour reminds me of my favourite maxim: hell hath no fury like a vested interest masquerading as a moral principle. Well, all this is a lengthy preamble to my apology for not getting back to you sooner. I hope it goes some way towards explaining. Now I must take issue with your refusal to accept my previous small tokens. Surely you appreciate that to a man in my singular position it is a new pleasure to be able to give. Please find enclosed a money order for £10,000 in your favour. On the moral position of entitlement to the money, I've reasoned to myself thus: the philosophies of all peoples tell us that all life is one. Ultimately, unity, not division. Everything that lives is held in mighty interdependency, and the symbiotic relationships of sun and planet, of culture and individual, of banking and commerce, these forces which drive our lives have but one source. Ultimately, whose money is it? Should you wish to continue this correspondence, there is a good chance that I will receive your letters and reply to them, though, in the circumstances, I cannot be absolutely certain. Kind regards. Cordially yours, Julius Hutch.
Dear Mr. Hutch, I am writing to you privately and not in my capacity as lending adviser. Thank you for yours, which arrived yesterday. £10,000 is more money than I have ever had before all at once. I have put it in an offshore account where it will earn good interest until this affair is settled one way or another. In these past few months, we've had people from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands, and also the police, and people from Interpol as well, in our office, going over our books and all through our procedures. At first, they were all trying to trace the money and convinced they would get it back. But now that so much time has gone by, I have to say that here at the bank we are all rather impressed by the way you and the money seem to have completely disappeared. Thank you so much for the money order. My warm good wishes to you. Pauline Tone, Mrs.
Dear Pauline, I feel we are such old friends now. Please call me Julius. As to my traceability, it's really quite simple. My letters are sent to the post office box number to which you have forwarded them, where they are collected and then sent by a series of homing pigeons to a gentleman of my acquaintance. From there they are converted into radio signals and transmitted on certain frequencies on the 1st of each month. My receiver works only one way, as a receiver, and is therefore not traceable. I'm sure you know all this, as I'm sure that agents of the bank have discovered my system. Indeed, their letters indicate as much, but clearly they have decided it is better to be able to communicate with me one way than not at all. I do not know what I should say were I to meet anyone with a direct interest in the original £4,601,740.72, for, in fact, the greater part of that fortune has passed out of my hands. In my previous letters I've described a part of my adventures and travels, but now that the thirsts of the flesh are quenched, it didn't take long, a larger desire has made itself felt. I want now to live out my remaining days in quietness, and prepare for death, which is, after all, the greatest adventure, as a philosopher would. And here comes a problem, for this particular philosopher's life account seems tainted by a final act of criminality. By that I mean use of money which was not, strictly speaking, mine to use. I wonder how many banks could stand so accused. I know nothing of the techniques for growing and harvesting cash, but I wonder if the creation of wealth is arranged quite fairly. If a bank loans millions for the exploitation of some natural resource, and huge profit accrues to multinational corporations on the backs of cheap labour, and further, if that cheap labour is abandoned without means to livelihood when the natural resource is used up, or the whim of the currency exchanges means profit can be found more easily elsewhere, is there theft in such a situation? Notwithstanding these thoughts on big banking, it continues to prick my conscience that the money cannot in any light be looked on as rightfully mine. However, so deep is my sense of outrage at the way the rich get richer while the poor get poorer, that I ultimately resolved to compromise with experiments in the nature of a modern-day Robin Hood. In short, I have given it all away. Well, almost all. I live now a frugal existence, quietly. I decided that I would pursue benefaction with the same rigour usually given to debt collection. Accordingly, I found access to data held by lending agencies. With the right expertise, it's not difficult. I then had several fictional company letterheads printed. Armed with quantities of bogus stationery and a word processor, I gaily posted cheques for thousands. Dear Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I would write, congratulations! The Society of Anonymous Philanthropists has selected you for its special celebratory award. Enclosed is a cheque in your favour. There are no strings or catches. This money comes to you as a result of your being alive. We urge you to enjoy it. Or I might say, Dear Mr. Such-and-such, and this one might be headed, Guild for Flash Cash, or Succour for Distressed Spenders. It has come to our notice that almost all your domestic bills are unpaid. This letter exhorts you to use the enclosed banker's draft to stick 2 fingers up at all your creditors. At first I dallied with trivial amounts of a few thousands, and then waited to see if the money was accepted. Invariably it was. But soon I grew bolder, and began to hand over larger amounts, 20,000 here, 50,000 there. Occasionally I would simply do exactly what the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands did to me, that is, place a large amount unexplained in a stranger's account, and leave them to ponder. That is what the bank did to me, but there was one important difference. Namely, I always made it clear that the money was legitimately due to whomever it was addressed. To the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands I decided to make token reparation. Accordingly, I sent them a money order for £46 and 1 penny. £46 and 1 penny is, of course, an exact fraction of 1% of the original, albeit a small fraction. It is, in fact, 1,000th of 1%. And at £46 and 1 penny per month, it would take 8,333 years to repay the principal, by which time the compound interest would be unthinkable. But I think it shows willing, and I hope it goes some way towards compensating them for the not inconsiderable expense they have incurred in this whole episode. The monthly arrangement of £46 and 1 penny will cease at my death. I have enjoyed our correspondence, and may I say how nicely you've played the interface between the mighty turnings of international banking and one elderly maverick. And so, my dear Pauline, until the next time, have a good time. If there is no next time, have a good life. Yours, with great pleasure, Julius Hutch. P.S. So pleased that you saw sense over the money order. Forgive the presumption, but I've organised that all your credit cards, store cards, your domestic bills this quarter, the outstanding payments on your car and your mortgage are all paid off.
This video was uploaded to the channel Thinking Out Louder. Please like, comment and subscribe to the Thinking Out Louder channel. Thank you.
Rose-fingered dawn lights the wine-dark sea. Aphrodite's town is the place to be.
Rose-fingered dawn lights the wine-dark sea. Aphrodite's town is the place to be. What?
From Peter Fang to the Board of Governors, the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Progress report. Esteemed Governors, there is a strange tradition in Britain at Christmas. It is called pantomime. In theatres all over the country, women pretend to be boys, and men pretend to be women. I am convinced that Julius Hutch is laughing at our revered bank by appearing as Dame Dingle in the West End of London. Tomorrow night, I and my staff of top operatives will dress in women's clothing so as not to be noticed. When I give the signal, we will stand up and throw custard pies at the stage, shouting, "Reveal yourself!" And Julius Hutch will be exposed.
Dear Julius, had a visit from an enchanting lady who works in a bank, a certain Mrs. P. Tone. She was seeking clarification on the implications of your last to her, the one where you promised to clear her mortgage and all other debts. Naturally, seeing that she was a friend of yours, I took the trouble to explain that if, hypothetically, and I stress that word, if, hypothetically, someone, such as possibly yourself, had come to be in possession of a rather large sum of money that certain other parties, such as in this hypothetical case a certain Far Eastern bank, might have some sort of tenuous hypothetical claim upon, and if this imaginary person had taken it upon themselves to go gallivanting around the place, scattering the used notes like so much seed upon a ploughed field. I think she caught my meaning, for she quickly understood that any possible beneficiaries of this hypothetical redistribution of wealth could, were they aware of the origin of this hypothetical money, be considered to be in receipt of stolen goods. A detail, but worth mentioning, I thought. Mrs. Tone did inquire as to your whereabouts, and there, of course, I was unable to be of service. That you continue to exist at all, I deduce from the fact that following your singular postal requirements results in correspondence. Beyond that, I know nothing. Regards, Sexton.
Dear Julius, I trust all is well with you. We hear of you variously at the bank. You have been reported to be living in the foothills of the Himalayas, the rainforests of South America, the South Pole, and other exotic parts like that. The truth is, Julius, no one knows where you are or what has become of you. As a matter of interest, I am able to tell you that the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands is still keen to make contact with you in order to discuss a certain matter. And I happen to know this, because last month I was taken to dinner by a gentleman by the name of Mr. Fang. As you may recall, he was a senior divisional executive with the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands at the time of your windfall. He is still with that same bank, although I understand that his job title is now junior divisional executive. Peter Fang struck me as a rather driven sort, if you know what I mean, and he does seem to have taken it all rather personally. I mean, as you yourself pointed out, it's not as if the £4,601,740.72 was actually his. Mr. Fang was very keen to know if I had had any correspondence with you directly. I explained that you had written to me a few times, and that I, in the way of courtesy, had of course responded. But, I said, I expected he knew all that already. He acknowledged such was the case. He then asked me if I had experienced any change in my financial situation recently. I owned that indeed I had. On receipt of your last, I thought it might be sensible to consult a lawyer. Accordingly, I went to see a gentleman by the name of Sexton Lewis. Funnily enough, I believe you are also acquainted with him. Mr. Lewis explained that the contents of your last letter would be best understood as an example of wishful thinking. He said that it would even be possible to interpret your letter in the nature of a prophecy and remain within the law. After that, Mr. Lewis succumbed to an outburst of vigorous laughter, and the meeting ended. Picture my surprise when I discovered that exactly as you had prophesied, all my debts had been paid off. Apparently, there is a company called Fair Shares, which is based, I believe, on an island in the South Pacific, which spends its time making just this kind of bequest. No one knows who funds the company or how, and it's all perfectly legal. How extraordinary! All I can say is, whoever is behind this company must be a remarkable person, and I think I should very much like to meet that person. I hope this story is clear. I think I've got most of the details right, but I'm not sure if Mr. Fang was able to follow it all. When at his request I gave this explanation, Mr. Fang, or poor dear Mr. Fang, as I can't help thinking of him, seemed to have the greatest difficulty swallowing his crème brûlée. He uttered a sound that was all vowels, and then he tried to strangle himself, or maybe he was simply burying his face in his hands. I was a little taken aback. After all, crème brûlée is a soft dessert. The evening ended shortly afterwards, and Mr. Fang, excuse me, poor dear Mr. Fang and I have made no plans to meet again. Incidentally, Julius, I wonder if I might ask your advice. I have accumulated several years' worth of holiday time from work, and I'm thinking about having a really special break. I know that by now you are a much-travelled man. Do you have any suggestions as to where I might go? I do hope you can find the time to give this matter some thought. My very warmest good wishes to you. Pauline.
Papal garden seems like home, except it's only found in Rome.
Papal garden seems like home, except it's only found in Rome. Uh-huh. Ah.
Pauline, my dear, how delightful to hear from you. I should like to assure you that my old friend Sexton Lewis has indeed interpreted my letters in quite the proper way. The subtlety of his methods, sometimes obscured by his expansive manner, has not been lost on me over the years. And I must say that should I ever be tested in a court of law, if ever it comes to that, then for me Sexton is the advocate I should choose to put my case. You spoke in your letter of wanting to meet the, and I quote, remarkable person who is behind the philanthropic company Fair Shares. It goes without saying that I, of course, have no idea who this individual might be. But let me ask you a question. Just suppose there was a way for you to meet this person, and suppose further that upon meeting them you found little to remark on. Might it not then be a disappointment to actually meet? Perhaps this chap, if it is a chap, is a deeply ordinary man who's lived a deeply ordinary life, and to whom perhaps one or two, or maybe even a succession of extraordinary events occurred. Maybe this ordinary type is even now more than a little puzzled as to what the next step is, but is simply making as best a fist of it as he can. I feel a bit like that myself. These are just idle thoughts, though, and balanced against them I have a proposal to make. You need a holiday, and to tell you the truth, I could do with a change of scene myself. Might we not rendezvous in some enchanting spot? But here comes a problem, and it is a puzzle of the nicest difficulty that I'm sure it will take all our powers of ingenuity to solve it. As you point out, the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands continues to be interested in my whereabouts. By the way, please do pass on my regards to the unhappy Mr. Fang. I'm dismayed to hear of his demotion. And I'm sure they will continue to monitor all of my incoming correspondence. I'm afraid that they will not scruple to invade your privacy in the same way. So, there we have it. How are we to arrange a private meeting with the eyes of the world upon everything we say to one another? Affectionately, Julius. If the Regent's wish had come to pass, we'd take our tea in old Madras.
If the Regent's wish had come to pass, we'd take our tea in old Madras. Well,
Dear Daddy, it was wonderful to see you again last month, and just as well that you used the runic signs to tell me the meeting place, for lately we have had several official-type visitors. At first we thought they'd cottoned on to your visits, but actually it's all about something else, which I'll come to in a moment. As you know, after our first harvest failed, we were all facing complete ruin, you as well. And then we had that inexplicable cash injection from Green Plan Unlimited, which apparently specialises in helping people who are trying to grow things using organic methods. I hope you approve of what we've done with their funding. But now that the place is fixed up and we've had a magnificent harvest, I'm sending a few bottles of the Chardonnay for your approval. A real spanner has been thrown in the works. You remember how I told you that all the copper mining had finished here? Well, now it seems that deep beneath this little plot of land there's even more copper. I don't know who discovered it first or how, but all kinds of people are interested in getting control of this land. We've been approached by several multinational companies, a couple of banks, and even the Australian government seems to be interested. So that explains all the comings and goings. The place looks so beautiful now. It really seems as if we're on the threshold of realising a dream. It would wrench my heart to sell, and who knows what they'd do to it. As the major shareholder, the ultimate decision falls to you, Daddy. Thank goodness we can write to each other privately, now that we've been able to get the new system going. Let me know what you think. Heaps and heaps, Kate.
If one could park in NYC, what a dream town then, you see?
If one could park in NYC, what a dream town then, you see. Oh, yes, the Big Apple.
My darling Kate, thank you for yours of last week, which arrived safely, being conveyed by the redoubtable Sydney. He is a magnificent postman. I know that dolphins aren't really smiling, it's just that their mouths are shaped like that, but I'm sure he was pleased to see me, and I fed him the usual delicacies. Well now, interesting developments at your end. Question. Is the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands amongst those interested in the vineyard? I've had occasion to acquaint myself with their doings, and I notice that they're keen to establish a presence in Australia. It may well turn out that they're just the people with whom we want to do business. You could put a few feelers out in that direction, And if possible, try to deal with Peter Fang. Say you've heard what an able chap he is, and so forth. My name needn't come into any of it, of course, and it might be as well to see to it that all my holdings are in fact registered under one of the various names I've found it convenient to use just lately. You know that about a year ago I began giving away large amounts of cash to complete strangers? This has been a most enjoyable adventure, and it strikes me as a worthwhile project. It does, however, occur to me that this giving can continue only as long as there are funds to give. The principal has dwindled to a mere couple of million. I know now that I'm at a crossroads. I've resolved, therefore, to take action in the way of turning an already, from my former perspective, vast sum of money into an even vaster one. I seem to see myself becoming by degrees a parody of a character from the pages of some improbable bestseller set in the stock exchanges of the world. I shall rise early to take the financial papers. I shall wheel, I shall deal. Memos, directives, and faxes will become the stuff of life for me. Alarm calls throughout the night as each market opens and closes, and always only one word shall be my maxim: profit. As you know, the greater part of my adult life has been lived as one financially challenged. I'm keen to redress the balance, and I'm in a hurry. Wish me luck. As ever, your doting father, Julius.
Progress report from Peter Fang. Honored governors, at last Julius Hutch is within our grasp. He has been hiding with the holy men of Mount Athos in Greece. I have a photograph of him dressed as a monk. The disguise fools nobody. At dawn tomorrow morning, when the monastery is surrounded with crack agents from our beloved bank's security department, I will rip the false beard from his face, and Hutch will be ours.
Here is the financial news. In one of the quietest days trading since records began, merchant bankers have been expressing hopes that governments around the world will get some ideas to stimulate activity.
The British government has promised faithfully not to devalue the currency. It follows as a certainty, therefore, that devaluation is only a few hours away. Sell all British holdings immediately. There's money to be made here.
City News and on the London Stock Exchange, trading was so vigorous that one leading analyst described it as the sort of activity usually only seen in fleas on heat.
Sell oil, buy tin. Move into lead. Sell copper, buy coffee. Take a position in pork bellies. Move into bonds, investigate tea. Sell sterling, dollars and marks, buy francs, pesetas and zlotys. Buy live hogs, sell nickel. Sell, buy, sell. The percentage return on this coordinated dealing will be spectacular.
Progress report from Peter Fang. Esteemed governors, I now have the true alias of Julius Hutch. He has been masquerading as a high-ranking Bedouin nomad and riding a camel. I have succeeded in gaining an invitation to the exclusive Feast of the Princes. It will give me great personal satisfaction to unveil Hutch by tearing from him the traditional headdress.
Dear Julius, the particular shares you're after do turn out to be available, in fact, but they are not going to be cheap. Still, if all falls out as you plan, I should think they're worth having at any price. What's next? World domination, perhaps? I understand that you're pretty fully occupied these days, and will simply say that the bowling greens are bleak without you. Regards, Sexton.
Dear Sexton, your letter, which hints of life at a quieter pace and speaks of the blameless pleasures of the green, arrives in very good time indeed. It is as if everything I've ever experienced in my life before in the way of resentment, frustration, anger, or envy is transformed within me to fashion a wide blade with which to carve a slice from the cake of the world's wealth. I've taken absurd risks with high stakes for huge returns, and each gamble has paid off. In short, I have lived in these demonic months a microcosm of the political and social processes that have created commercial man. And at last there's come a day when I have woken up rich. Not suddenly rich with a 7-figure number coming out of the blue, such a sum as might purchase a fraction of an acre in one of the world's capitals, but deeply and meaningfully and permanently rich, with uncountable sums arising from many various sources, and arriving daily in increasing intensity in my many various bank accounts. Rich beyond the wildest dreams of avarice. It is the bleakest day of my life. I'm staying in New York. Early this morning I was walking along Fifth Avenue. I was munching a bagel. Ahead of me a man dressed in rags emerged from Central Park and made a beeline for me. As this man came towards me, I saw suddenly, beyond the outstretched hand and the meaningless inconvenience that the transaction of a few coins of loose change would make. I think he said, "Spare some change, buddy." I reached to my trouser pocket and pulled out all the coins I had, together with a few notes. "Why, thank you, sir," he said. "My dear chap," said I, "this won't do at all. Please take all I have." I took out my wallet and unsheathed the few $100 I had there and tried to thrust them into his hands. But the man wouldn't take them. He looked at me as though I were mad and ran off. I think I was a little mad at that moment. It was exactly as if I were emerging from a bad dream, the dream of my encounter with the dark face of the god of money. I am profoundly taken by the absurdity of it all, that I, Julius Hutch, a man who can no longer move, sleep, or drink a cup of tea under his own name, has now encountered someone whose very life I could buy and sell, perhaps have done so in my dark adventure with gold. Someone with, to be sure, no asset about him save freedom, who is richer than I in the only sense that matters. The frenzy is over. Alas, it's not quite so simple as calling a halt to the whole business. I have responsibilities. I have an empire to run. I shall, however, take a holiday, and I know just the place to take it. Regards, old friend. Julius. Oslo, bright midnight town, midsummer's lights of high renown.
Oslo, bright midnight town, midsummer's lights of high renown. Oslo.
Good morning. Foreign news now. Early today, a man was found buried up to the neck in the middle of the Sahara Desert. When asked how he got there, he would only repeat over and over again.
Dear Julius, it was delightful to meet you after our long correspondence. I was very pleased to find you in such high spirits, and in such excellent health as well, particularly after what you told me about the exertions you've been through in the last few years. It seems such a slight chance that I understood your messages, but when I received a gift-wrapped box containing 6 herring, I was rather puzzled. I was putting them in the fridge when I noticed that each of the 6 fish had a single red dot painted on its forehead, if fish have foreheads, and then after the first of your 6 postcards arrived, I began to understand. I did my best to play my part in the ruse. After your first, I booked a ticket to Athens, and subsequently, as was indicated, Rome, Madras, New York, a place that I have always wanted to visit, and finally Oslo, which was very nice too. What a wonderful series of excursions it was, especially as some thoughtful person had arranged limousines, first-class hotels and restaurants, and leisurely sightseeing with informed guides. Do you know, it may be my imagination, but I'm sure I caught a glimpse of poor dear Mr. Fang wherever I went. If so, I am glad he's had a bit of a holiday as well. He seemed a little fatigued when last we met. It was only when in possession of the last of the 6 postcards.
I'll be Adam, you be Eve. Know that you can count on me. No serpent's fang can us deceive when we reread carefully.
Then I saw the key. The first word of the first card, the second word of the second, and so on. If read in this way, what emerges is Rose, Garden, Regent's Park, Midsummer's Eve. It was a delightful evening. I scarcely noticed the rain, and there did seem to be rather a lot of small insects. Gnats, I think they were. I must apologize about your suit. Have you managed to get it dry cleaned? Did the stain come out? I can't imagine why my hand shook as I handed you the cup. I do hope our acquaintance may continue. Pauline.
Dear Pauline, many delights at returning home after a long voyage, but none quite to match the pleasure of meeting you at long last. I'm so pleased that you enjoyed our little game with the postcards. I wasn't at all sure if the message could be understood. The scheme did rather tax my rhyming skills to the limit. It's difficult for me to find words to express my feelings at the fact that you brought tea. But not just tea anyhow, as I have had to become accustomed to it, but water just at the boil, a warmed pot, the brew properly steeped, and the milk first, just as it should be, when made with real honest-to-goodness tea leaves. Please don't trouble yourself about my suit at all. It was I who was clumsy. Truth to tell, I was more than a little nervous at our first meeting. Can't quite think why. So let us say it was a sudden gust of wind that spilled the cup. I must confess that I very seldom wore suits in the old days. I sought comfort first and elegance later, or perhaps not at all. It's only since I've grown to independent means that my dress sense has developed at all. I think it was Thoreau who said, "Beware of all ventures that require new clothes." Maybe I should learn from that. But I'm rambling. It is my hope, too, that our acquaintance, may I say, friendship, continues. But tea by all means. I believe in common with all right-thinking people that all things end and begin in tea. Contentedly. Affectionately. Imprisonment is a matter of some embarrassment to me. After posting my last to you, after our enchanting evening amongst the roses, I found myself drawn as though by homing instinct back to Nightingale Crescent. I arrived there close to midnight and was tremendously reassured to find my house still standing and looking in the moonlight exactly as I'd seen it many times before. I got as far as inserting my front door key in the lock, and was about to turn it, when the question arose in my mind of whether I could really just enter and take up residence once more, as if nothing had happened. I withdrew the key, and after a moment's reflection, walked directly to the police station. "I am Julius Hutch," I said to the duty sergeant, "and I have come home." "I'm very glad to hear it, sir," he said. And then there was a bit of a lull. The sergeant was politeness itself. Was I lost, he wondered? Did I need assistance? Had I enjoyed my holiday? I explained that none of these things were troubling me, and put the facts of the matter, touching on the £4,601,740 and 72 pence delivered to me in error by the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. "Very interesting, sir," said the sergeant. He then went to consult his files, returning a little while later to explain that no warrant for my arrest had been issued, and any business between me and the bank was no concern of his. He wished me good night. I walked home feeling thwarted, rather, but my last action before retiring to sleep in my house, which was exactly as I'd left it, if rather dustier, was to place a call to the London offices of Reuters News Agency. That did the trick, and I was taken into custody soon after dawn the following morning, to the accompaniment of flashbulbs and cameras. Ah, what price celebrity! I had thought that the prison letters of Julius Hutch would be an impressive work, possibly running to several volumes. However, I've just heard that the authorities have agreed to my release on bail tomorrow morning. Accordingly, I'm penning this in some haste in order that there may be at least one prison letter of Julius Hutch. There is, I suppose, a possibility that I shall return to this accommodation, or one very similar, and in that case I shall dedicate myself to writing letters of campaign to our leaders on matters of national importance. I have been here now for 24 hours, which is quite a long time to live in the hospitality of the state. How curious it is that some experiences seem to contain their opposite meaning. Upon entry into Her Majesty's Prison, Pentonville, I experienced a baffling sense of all things, release. And do you believe me if I tell you that I enjoyed the best night's sleep since my odyssey began? What's happened, I suppose, is that the anxiety of my fugitive condition, never completely absent from my mind during the time of my wanderings, has now left me entirely. The worst has happened. I have been apprehended, but I'm still here. And in this last chapter of this particular strand of my life story, at least now my doings need not be furtive. Hoping for better quarters, affectionately, Julius.
Dear Julius, long way from that nice quiet retirement you were looking forward to. Gentleman of independent means, international financier, market maker, and lately, jailbird. Whatever next? You've certainly managed to keep the firm busy in recent times. If we continue at this rate, I may have to take on more staff. Do let me know if you have any more grandiose schemes up your sleeve. That's assuming you're in agreement with me that this particular history stands ready to be resolved. Of course, by now, I understand that it's safe to assume nothing where Hutch International is concerned, but it would be nice to be kept in the picture. I followed your instructions, and everything is now prepared. Say when, and I'll let slip the dogs of law. What fun! Hugely entertained, yours, Sexton. P.S. The woods are waiting.
Dear Daddy, your spectacular dawn arrest made the television news here. I was so proud of you. I thought you carried yourself with as much poise as Socrates himself would have done. You old philosopher, you. I did think it was witty of them to set bail at £4,601,740 and 72 pence. I've come to know Peter Fang quite well over the past few months. He's made a point of visiting us personally at each phase of the purchase. I must say that he's been charm itself, and he seems to have become quite an important person at the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. I can tell that, because each time he visits us, he drives a bigger car. In fact, the last time, he was chauffeured. I've had the geophysical survey done as you asked. The report is enclosed. Makes interesting reading, doesn't it? Take that, together with the fact that whenever we ask Mr. Fang how he's going to develop the site, he always has to rush away to avoid being late for an appointment. Funny that, when we're 200 miles from Adelaide and the nearest offices. And I think our suspicions were correct. 6 years now since the fires. The winery shows no sign of them. The water gardens we've made and the trees we've planted do a lot to cool the place in the summer. The little ones love it here. And I'll be heartbroken too to leave it. When it's all over, you must come and see your grandchildren again, and we'll put the whole thing to rest over a chilled bottle of Kate's champagne. Looking forward to the case. Think it'll be a hoot. Lots and lots. Kate.
Dear Julius, congratulations on your release from captivity. What a relief. I have returned to my life at the bank, having by now used up all the accumulated leave due to me. The pace at work seems slow after all my adventures and travels of the past few months, but up to a point I enjoy the routine. I say up to a point. I think it is that by travelling to all those exotic places that I have become aware that life needn't be quite so dull as it has been at times. The only time I had travelled abroad previously was once, when I was 19. I went to Corsica. We were camping near a beach, and one morning I got up very early and walked down to the sea to watch the dawn. As the sun rose, I had this moment which I must have forgotten about since. It was a moment when I realised it wasn't difficult to get away, to go travelling, see new things, think new things. I did forget that for sure, because I've never travelled since. It makes me wonder what the middle part of my life has been about. The partnership idea you suggested the other evening has given me a lot to consider. It would involve changing all sorts of things. As you know, I did try something of the kind once before, but that was a long time ago. You will understand if I take a little time to think it over? I must admit the idea is very exciting. It gives rise to other feelings too, which I can't write down. You seem to regard the forthcoming court case very philosophically. From your letters and from talking to you in the rose garden, I don't find that surprising. I do know that I would not be so calm. Well, I'm not calm about it. If luck has anything to do with the outcome, I'm sure it will go well. I think it's fair to say, Mr. Hutch, that you are the luckiest man I've ever met. With love, Pauline.
From Peter Fang, Chief Executive, Investment Division, to the Board of Governors, the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Top secret. Esteemed Governors, I am able to tell you that we are only a few days away from signing the final papers in relation to the purchase of Kate's Winery in South Australia. The Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands has so far invested 65 million Australian dollars on the research and purchase of this vineyard and necessary equipment. There has been much speculation as to why we are interested in it. This has boosted our share price nicely. As soon as the final papers are signed, Operation License to Print will begin. I, Peter Fang, will not see the first installations, because I personally shall be flying to London to attend the criminal proceedings against Julius Hutch. Not only will the £4,601,740.72 come back to us, but we shall also claim all the other millions of profit that he has made using our money. Esteemed Governors, we are on the verge of great victory. Nothing can go wrong.
Dear Pauline, Yes, of course I understand that you will want time to think it over. As with any business proposition, the time has to be right, and all the various documents, funds, and goods in the right place. Not something to be rushed into. And after all, Lao Tse says, in business, watch the timing. I did so appreciate your gift. A rose cast in glass. It makes an admirable paperweight, and very apt, for these two elements, paperwork and roses, are uppermost in my life at the moment. Indeed, at present, each one rather vies for first place in my consciousness. It may be the result of too much of the one and too little of the other during the years of my travels, and previously, but I find my interest inclines firmly towards the flowers, and scarcely at all in the worldly direction. I've now become so accustomed to surprise as almost to have the habit of it, but that my heart should be so expanded in this new direction is the most surprising thing yet. You sign your last letter to me with love. Let me hope, then, that I'm not entirely foolish to wish that one day soon you will ask me to show you the dotted line. With love, too, Julius.
Facsimile transmission from Sexton Lewis and Partners to Mr. Peter Fang, Company Secretary, Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Dear Mr. Fang, we act for Mr. Julius Hutch. Our client has instructed us to contact you for the express purpose of putting to you certain facts of which you may have been previously unaware. Our client particularly wishes to disclose these facts to you, pending your forthcoming court action against him. It has come to our notice that the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands has taken a commercial position in regard to a vineyard by the name of Kate's Winery in South Australia. You may remember that your intention, as stated in the contract, was to exploit the reserves of copper lying deep beneath the surface of the property in question. It is with some surprise, therefore, that we learn that the principal mineral deposit beneath the surface of Kate's Winery is not, in fact, copper, but uranium. That is point number one. Point number two, which arises directly out of point number one, unfolds as follows. It is simply that in recent years the Australian government has passed certain environmental legislation, including very strict controls on just this substance of uranium. Only last month, by an amendment to the said legislation, the said Australian government was empowered to take action in the way of seizure of assets and capital, if their environmental code is breached, and all this notwithstanding anything two individual parties may have said in contract to each other. Point number three may be regarded as a further complicating factor in this situation. In your dealings and researches with Kate's Winery, you will doubtless have become aware that 51% of the stock has at all time been retained by a company called Getting and Spending Limited, which is registered in the British Virgin Islands, where the Bank of those islands acts as trustee for a certain individual. And there your researches will have come to a halt. The Bank of the British Virgin Islands has never made disclosure of the identity of any such individual without that individual's express consent. But we are now able to inform you, indeed our client has instructed us to do so, that he and the individual indicated above are one and the same person. Therefore, when under contract you release the final tranche of millions required to purchase Kate's Winery, and the aforementioned 51% of stock finally passes to you, you will in fact be buying from none other than Julius Hutch. It is worth mentioning here that our client, Mr. Hutch, used a certain portion of an original sum of money, some £4,601,740.72, to create and register Getting and Spending Limited, the parent company, which now owns, among other things, 51% of Kate's Winery. It could be said, then, that you were using a considerable sum of your own money to purchase something that, in one sense, you already own. We would go so far as to say, having brought to bear the finest legal minds at our disposal on the situation, the facts could be so interpreted in a court of law. Ah, Mr. Fang, if only life were that simple. Which brings me to point number 4. You may be aware that our client is now a very wealthy man, but it is unlikely that you realize just how wealthy he has become. He is, in his own words, incomprehensibly, absurdly wealthy. During the creation of the said wealth, our client deemed it prudent to acquire some 84% of the non-voting shares in the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. Your bank, in fact. He has also acquired, by process of delicate and formidably expensive negotiation, sufficient of the closely guarded voting shares in that said bank, to convert under the bank's Articles of Association the aforementioned non-voting shares into voting shares. As sophisticated business people, you will realize at once the implications of such a move. Once realized, it will give our client, as the controlling shareholder, complete control over the board of directors, and therefore all future activities of your bank, as well as access to virtually all the capital. Currently, some $16.5 billion. You may wish to proceed in your action against Mr. Hutch. It goes without saying that a case of this complexity could last well into the 21st century. But what would happen in the interim? Perhaps Mr. Hutch himself might feel forced to disclose, however reluctantly, certain details regarding the negotiations outlined above. Ugly words spring to mind. As for the uranium itself, we all know that that is a sensitive substance which requires handling of the most exquisite delicacy. What is to be done? Happily, there is an alternative. Our client, Mr. Hutch, cordially invites you to discuss over luncheon certain ideas that occur to him. In view of the time situation, you may like to fax us by return. Yours very sincerely, Sexton Lewis, Senior Partner.
Dear Julius, I have only a few words to say. Where do I sign? Much love, Pauline.
Dear Mr. Fang, perhaps now that we are finally acquainted, I may call you Peter. What an inspired idea it was to meet at the London annual tea-tasting ceremony. I'm sure we are kindred spirits after all. What an equally inspired idea of yours, I think it was yours, to run Kate's Winery as a theme park in conjunction with the state of South Australia, showing how uranium would have been used in the bad old days before ethical investors like yourself had come to the fore. Incidentally, I gather that one of your principal witnesses in the case against me was to have been a lady by the name of Pauline Tone. I'm afraid that would never have worked, Peter. You see, only last week Pauline Tone did me the honour to consent to become the second Mrs. Hutch. As I'm sure you know, spouses cannot be forced to testify against one another. I'm absolutely delighted that we've managed to iron out all our potential disagreements. And may I take the opportunity to congratulate you on your forthcoming promotion. Good luck and good business. Yours, Julius.
Dear Daddy, dear Pauline, welcome. Now, first things first. Go out to veranda. Look for sign of courting wombats. Find bottle fizzy liquid in ice bucket. Drink immediately. End of instructions. Over to you. Many congrats. We're thrilled for you both. Loads from us all, Kate and family.
Dear Kate, what a honeymoon you gave us. I have travelled to all sorts of exotic places since my acquaintance with your father began, but the holiday at Kate's new winery just north of the Hunter Valley in New South Wales has been the best of all the travelling. I think now that I have tasted it that you are right. Australian wine is the best in the world. Julius is keen to import Kate's wines into Britain. In fact, he's full of plans for the future. I thought he might be ready to settle down with his books, but no, it seems that he feels there is too much to do. I suppose that's what decided me in the end. To accept Julius' proposal seemed like a step into the unknown, but I did know that whatever life would be like with this man, it would not be dull. He's made a will. I don't think he's ready to depart just yet, but he said the other day that he's always been behind with his paperwork, and this is the one document he wants to prepare in advance. Doubtless it will change and change again as he chases after new ideas. I'm sending you a copy so you can see what he's planning, but don't worry, he's as energetic as ever. Julius often speaks of his surprise now that everything is finally sorted out with the Bank of Hong Kong and the islands. And Julius is finally, legally, one of the wealthiest men in the world. I realise just how surprised I am as well. He's a great quoter, my new husband. I think I'm catching it from him. My mother used to say, and she was right, the future is never what you think it will be. Lots of love to you, Kate, and to the family. Pauline.
Press release from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands. The Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands is delighted to announce a revolutionary approach to personal banking. In the last few years, the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands has employed Mr. Julius Hutch for the specific task of traveling the world to make a series of special endowments to individuals in need. And the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands has supplied the whole of the original funding for this project. This generosity was set up as a large-scale experiment to see if the latest developments in chaos theory could be applied to personal banking. The Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands is delighted with the success of this innovative project. Not only has our raised profile attracted more investment, thus benefiting our shareholders, but we have been able to help many people in troubled circumstances. We wish to clarify a misunderstanding that has arisen, namely that funds were given to Mr. Hutch by accident, who then absconded with them, and that ever since we at the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands have been working night and day, 7 days a week, to get in touch with Mr. Hutch again. This is complete fantasy. As president of the bank, I, Peter Fang, hereby categorically state that the misunderstanding is no more than a vicious rumor put around by our competitors. The Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands will continue to make these bold new initiatives to push back the frontiers of what banking is today and what banking may be tomorrow.
This is the last will and testament of me, Julius Hutch. Being of sound mind, I hereby revoke all former wills and codicils. It is from a condition several magnitudes beyond astonishment that I find myself possessed of an astronomical sum of money, many billions of pounds sterling, a sum sufficient, I suppose, to run a short war, were I so minded. Finding myself in that area of life where the great banker in the sky can at any moment be expected to deliver the final statement, the vexing question of what to do with it all must be given some sort of consideration. The needs in the world are so many and so obvious, one would think it a relatively simple thing with such a fortune to, for example, relieve famines, or fund medical research, or plant many millions of trees, or commission the design of a water-powered motor car, or pump the gases of consciousness-expanding drugs into parliamentary sessions the world over. The possibilities are endless. During my years of self-imposed exile, I came to understand as never before the imperative at the core of us all, to be able to call a certain patch of ground one's own. Therefore, I propose the following: that my ridiculously vast personal fortune be used to purchase all available and unused property wherever there are homeless people. That the funds be used to safely and generously convert these buildings into living spaces to the highest of standards. That these converted properties be given freehold to those without homes. This is a utopian vision. Were it ever to come to pass, it would require so much cooperation between all social agencies as to make quite a new precedent. As a limbering up to this required cooperation, I also propose, by way of a condition, a more modest project. It must be obvious to even the meanest intelligence and therefore presumably also to our politicians, that one of the greatest single obstacles to any sort of dignified survival here on Earth is the continued use of the internal combustion engine. Much has been written and said on this subject, and it doesn't need an old dullard like me to point out once again the blindingly obvious. I have a condition, then. It is this. On the day that 1,000 white bicycles are released for public use from Hyde Park Corner, my funds will be made available as outlined above. Signed, Julius Hutch.
Financial news now, and the four main British high street banks responded with caution to the announcement from the Bank of Hong Kong and the Islands that it would be adopting the principles of chaos theory and giving the stuff away at random. A statement from senior banking officials the world over said that such a move could threaten the very fabric of society. But, in a random opinion poll where people from every country on earth were questioned, 100% were in favour and